Welcome to Headline to Heartline. Every palace corridor eventually ends at a very ordinary door. And right now, the door closing on Royal Lodge is making a lot of people feel something far bigger than bricks and mortar. Let's start by saying the thing many people want to hear, because it's the sentence that has been shared and liked and repeated. Andrew won't get any money back after leaving Royal Lodge. The BBC puts it very simply. The man once known as Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, could, in theory, have been entitled to about £488,000 when he surrendered his lease, but because the house is judged dilapidated and in need of major repairs, the Crown Estate says that in all likelihood, he will receive nothing. For people who have watched this story for years, that headline lands like a kind of emotional refund. No golden handshake, no soft exit, no public check after everything that has happened. You see comments cheering the news, demanding that he be moved from a 30-room mansion to a 2-bedroom flat, insisting that he and Sarah get real jobs, almost tasting a little bit of justice for a man whose real reckoning in court never came. And I want to be honest with you, I don't think he should get that money either. If you ask me whether Andrew should walk away from this arrangement with a 6-figure consolation prize, my answer is no. But if we stop there, we miss something important, because in terms of his overall wealth and the millions that have already changed hands in his life, that $488,000 doesn't really change the story. He has already paid a reported multi-million-pound settlement to Virginia Giuffre, and even though that never felt like the full justice many survivors and observers wanted, it dwarfs this disputed sum. So is the missing payout a consequence, a punishment, or just a symbolic line in a very long and complicated account? While we sit with that, something else is happening quietly in the background. Sarah Ferguson, who has shared Royal Lodge with Andrew for years after their divorce, is now officially looking for a new home. Her spokesperson has told People magazine that she is assessing a number of options currently and no final decision has been made about where she will live. They stress that she will not be moving into a converted barn or annex on one of her daughter's properties, and that she intends to forge an independent life rather than ask for a property or provision from the royals. On paper, that sounds calm and respectable. But if you listen the way ordinary people are listening in 2025, it hits a very different nerve. Because at the same time as we're told Sarah is considering her best options for a new home, many households are choosing between the energy bill and the credit card bill. People are cutting food shops, canceling plans, taking second jobs. The idea of having a number of options about where to live, surrounded by press statements and spokespersons, belongs to a world most people will never see. So we have these two strands: Andrew, who will not get his refund because the house is in such poor condition, and Sarah exploring her independent future in a way that still sounds deeply privileged compared with the daily reality of many of the people reading those articles. And between the two of them, the public mood is raw. They are called freeloaders, barnacles, spongers. There are jokes about downsizing from 60 rooms to 40. And underneath the jokes, there is something more serious: resentment born from a very real financial crisis. If you're finding this kind of slower, deeper look useful, remember to like and subscribe. It keeps the space going for thoughtful conversations when the headlines get loud. Now, let's clean some of the noise away and look more carefully at what is actually happening at Royal Lodge. Andrew's original lease was not a casual arrangement. He paid a large premium up front and committed to refurbishing and maintaining a house that belongs to the Crown Estate, which is ultimately meant to serve the public, not a private family. Over the years, he and Sarah stopped paying rent altogether, and the property fell into such disrepair that the landlord, the Crown Estate, now says that any compensation he might have received will be eaten up by the cost of the work required. There is a certain rough fairness in that. If an ordinary tenant left a house in poor condition, they would not expect to walk away with a check. At the same time, the numbers remind us that this is still a story at the very top end of society. Surveys of the lease talk about millions spent on refurbishment, millions paid or not paid in rent, millions argued over in Parliament. For a man who bought a £13 million ski chalet, this missing $488,000 is not the moral earthquake some people imagine. It is more like the system finally remembering to add a line to the end of the bill. Sarah's position is even more complicated because she lives in the overlapping shadows of Andrew's choices and the public's anger. Officially, her friends and representatives are keen to emphasize that she has not asked for a house, that she wants to stand on her own feet, that she will not be moving into her daughter's homes. And yet the entire tone of that communication, that she is carefully choosing the best option for her next chapter, that she is narrowing down her shortlist, sends a message she may not intend. This is still a life lived inside a protected bubble. It's here that I feel the same irritation many of you do, because I don't hear an apology or an awareness of how lucky it is to be choosing between several comfortable possibilities. I hear a continuation of a royal habit. When things go wrong, you change houses, you reshape the story, but you never quite step into the same economic reality most people are living in. At the same time, if we flatten Sarah into a caricature, we miss something real. She has lost projects, faced public mockery, and she has faced serious health challenges of her own, including cancer treatment. For a woman of her age to leave a long-term home, to separate her future physically from a man she has stood beside for decades, and to do it under the gaze of a press that still delights in her mistakes is not an easy transition. She is not a victim of poverty, but she is also not the cartoon villain some comments would like her to be. So where does that leave us? With three truths that can sit together even if they are uncomfortable. First, that Andrew will probably receive no payout when he leaves Roe Lodge, and within the narrow logic of that lease, that is fair. The property is in poor condition, and the Crown Estate, under pressure from lawmakers and the public, is finally acting like a serious landlord rather than a discreet family friend. Second, that in the bigger moral picture, that missing refund does not settle the ledger of his life. It does not erase his association with Jeffrey Epstein. It does not answer the questions survivors still carry. It does not make up for years of invisible subsidies, peppercorn rent, grace and favor status, the simple fact of being allowed to stay so long in a house that belongs, in theory, to all of us. It is an adjustment on a spreadsheet, not a reckoning. And third, that Sarah Ferguson's carefully worded independence, her number of options, her desire not to ask for provision, exposes, without meaning to, how wide the gap has become between royal reality and everyone else's. When so many people are cutting back, the idea of announcing your house search through a glossy magazine feels jarring. No matter how much personal pain lies behind her decisions, the way they are communicated still tells a story about privilege. In the end, Royal Lodge is a house that has become a mirror. When we look at it now, we see more than a dilapidated mansion and a missing refund. We see anger at inequality, fatigue with old arrangements, and a deep confusion about what consequences should look like for people born into palaces. We see a woman trying to step into an independent life, but doing it in a way that reminds us she has always had more cushions than most of us will ever know. Thank you for listening. If these slower, more reflective journeys from headline to heartline speak to you, please like and subscribe so we can keep walking them together. And as the story of Royal Lodge moves into its final chapters and new doors open for Andrew and Sarah, perhaps the real question is not which house they choose next, but whether any of those grand rooms will ever really bring them closer to the world that is watching from the outside.